All right, the one, the only David Vallier. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing wonderful. Anytime I get to hang out with you in person or via Zoom, I am elated.
Elated is a great word for it. There's a
Yeah,
lot of
elated,
other words we could use, but we're not going to do that
but we're
today.
not going to use those. But elated will be the word we will use.
Elated. I love it. Yeah, man. I love hanging out with you. Tell us who you are, where you're at, what you're doing, and we'll start there.
Yeah, well, my name's David Vallier, originally from Lafayette, Louisiana, Cajun, born and raised.
Ooh, I don't know
Yeah.
if I knew that.
Oh, yeah. Laissez le bon temps rouler means let the good times roll.
It
I'm
all
just,
makes sense now.
yeah, yeah, of course. It really does. So I grew up there. I was there till like I was 17 and three-fourths. Then I packed my things. That's a whole long story, but I packed my things, moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, and have been here ever since. I moved here to go to a ministry school and went on all kinds of adventures. You know, in the span of many many years, I've been here as of this coming August 20th. I'll be here for 20 years. So that's kind of crazy. So yeah, I was just doing the do, and I'm still here in Fort Mill, South Carolina, which is about like, I mean, you've been here before. What 10, 15 minutes outside of Charlotte, maybe even closer than that. Um, and I've got two kids, Jacques and Johan. Jacques is 8, going on like 17. I think he's going to be like either a model or so. He's just a beautiful, beautiful child, but
He
like with the
is.
biggest personality. And then I've got a 5-year-old named Johan, who is my exact twin. As far as personality goes, I mean, he is absolutely wild. Imagine me as a child. That is Johan.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm just here, and then I've got my wife Ellery, of course. We've been married. This coming October will be 10 years,
Wow.
and yeah, just loving family, loving the Lord, doing all kinds of different ministry stuff. We can get into that later, but yeah, but that's the best thing is just the family and being with them and growing together, and yeah,
That's
that's
awesome,
the
man.
highlight of my life.
Let's start there. Balancing family with ministry, it's such like a taboo subject because ministers are supposed to spend like family is your first ministry, and we don't set that same standard for like policemen, doctors, lawyers, construction workers. Like that's not the standard, but it
Right.
is for ministers. So do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I let me just say something about the church standards that are put out there so much. In fact, I was watching a podcast all about church standards today. Um, don't care. And let me just be. I know that's going to come across a certain way,
I
um,
love it.
but here's the thing. I love your opinions. I love everyone's opinion, and honestly, all of the opinions have so much value. Here's where I just kind of immediately turn my ears off, and this may be good or bad. It's probably a little bit of both. But um, and if you're a Star Wars fan, you're going to know what I'm about to say here. But when you speak in absolutes, you're speaking a little Sithish to me. And so I immediately am like, I don't know, because what I've learned in my walk with the Lord is that everyone has these different walks and different approaches and different communications and different, honestly, processes with the Lord. Um, Now, obviously, there's the things that are non-negotiable. There are
Yeah.
things that are within the scriptures we understand that you cannot do this and that and that and that. But then there's other things where I'm just kind of like, you know what? To each their own, and we're all trying. And I think our opinions, we should hear each other's opinions. But the moment we start speaking about this is how it should be, and this is, and if you're not doing this, you're both. I just, that's cool, but please don't talk to me about it for 2 hours. I'd literally rather do anything else than listen to you stand on your soapbox, because honestly, it's not even that I have too much to do. I just don't want to hear it.
Right.
Because it's just like it's such a waste of breath. Anyway, all that to say is the expectations that are set on people in ministry with family. It's so it's such a nuanced thing that you have to kind of understand. Like some people, they have all the time in the world. Other people, they do have to learn how to balance that. Other people, they thrive, being in that ministry atmosphere, and the kids are crawling underneath the pews and they're at every meeting. And then other times, that I've really admired pastors that will be really strict and have hard lines, but I am never in the place where I am judging one way that this person's doing and another way that this person's doing it. It really is a beautiful thing when you allow people to be human and
Yes.
have different approaches and different walks. Now, I think the non-negotiable thing is, yes, your family is first, but how does that look like to your family
Mm.
in a unique way? And I think that's a question, but we don't allow people to really ask or even articulate because we have a certain way that we feel is supposed to go. And so the minute they say, well, they do this, and it's like, well, I don't. It's like, wrong, heathen. It's just like, ugh. The church.
Blasphemy.
Yeah. Sorry, that was a long answer,
No,
but
that's an amazing answer. And you said what I believe, that like we've removed humanity from the conversation, and we've kind of almost have set people up as these false gods that, hey, you have to adhere to what I believe of you,
right,
versus, oh yeah, you're another human being doing ministry. And like,
right,
if there's
right.
one thing I love that The Chosen has done, it's brought the humanity of Jesus, but it's also brought the humanity of these men that lived it. And it's
Yeah.
like, and I know not everybody loves that show, and yeah, there's things that they've done, good, bad, or ugly, whatever it is, that's like, but they did it, and it's like, man, it's beautiful because it's like, oh yeah, these people get frustrated. These people are either married or single, or they want to get married. They are getting, it's like, and it's like, yeah, like they're living their life while doing the ministry. But for some reason, we've elevated them to, the gospels were written by, and it's like, dude, just, it was men who pooped
Yes.
and peed and then threw
Exactly.
up and got sick,
Exactly.
doing what they could, inspired by God.
Yeah, and like for instance, like, and just so to let the people that are going to be listening to this and watching into kind of like the way I think about ministry and family is, I tend to go on the side of that. I'm kind of like, and I know it's not popular, especially within charismatic ministry. Like when we are working together, especially if I'm working in the same organization as other people, you're my coworker. Um, and after that time is done, I'm home with the family. I am not necessarily one that subscribes to let's do life together with everyone. Because
Right.
and when I hear that, like in church cultures and stuff like that, like we should be a family, we should be a body. I'm like, um, I don't know if I want to be everybody's family. You know what I mean? And like I think a lot of times it's like we're playing house in church, and then we're not allowing people to actually have, um, you know, preferences, personalities. Some people click, some people don't. Maybe what it looks like is that when we want to say let's do life together, it's let's go after the Lord together in our own unique way, but focused on going after the Lord in this, in like a spiritual mindset and in a family mindset. But it doesn't necessarily mean we all have to be getting around each other's dinner tables and all that stuff. Yes, that's beautiful. And yes, let's reach out to people that we don't know, all that kind of stuff. I'm not saying
Right.
you don't do that. However, I'm saying that a lot of times I think people get real twisted in the church world when they're saying, you're not doing family right because my family's not going to this family's dinner every time we're invited
Mm,
every week. You get what I mean? It's just,
yeah.
it gets weird. It gets weird. And so, all that to say is I'm kind of like a hard line kind of person when it comes to that kind of stuff, because I'm like, all right, there are people within that structure that I'm in that, yeah, I do vibe with, and it's beyond coworker. But then, honestly, there's a good group that maybe I don't. And
Yeah.
we are coworkers, and I love you, and I pray for you, and I'll run with you. But the running stops at 5 p.m. when we clock out. I'm at home with my kids and my wife, and we're chilling. You know what I mean?
That's so good.
Um, Gosh, I feel like I'm gonna not have people happy with me, but it's just the truth.
That's the truth, man.
So,
Because if you look at it, yeah, like are there some people that you're just going to naturally vibe with? Absolutely. But the people that you don't vibe with, if we're forcing this community to happen when like, yeah, like we might work well together, but we won't like really connect outside of that. Or
Exactly.
I think some of burnout in ministry happens out of like forcing compassion when I
Yeah.
actually just need to go chill on the couch with my kids and watch a movie, you know?
Exactly. And again, I just want to reemphasize that I think it is vital to go out and make connections that are beyond yourself and that aren't necessarily in your group. But I also think on the other side of the coin, we have called things cliquish that aren't like I've heard,
Come
people
on.
in church be like, this is a clique. Like I'm no, this is the creatives in your church bonding over creativity. These are the business people in your church bonding over business. These are the moms in your church bonding over being moms. Like there are natural connections that are not cliques. It's actually community. And when you let that thrive within the greater community, then you'll begin to see a natural organic meshing of the two instead of trying to force them together like a freaking pickle and peanut butter sandwich. They don't go.
They
you know,
don't.
it's like you can eat it, you can pretend to enjoy it, but they don't taste good together.
Someone's
Um,
eating it right now, just being like,
yeah, they're like, oh. uh, but like they can live in the same pantry, they can live in the same house, they can serve the same purpose. But you get what I'm trying to
yeah,
say here. It's like it's these weird little mindsets we get ourselves into church, which actually causes more stress and more strife
yeah,
than actually letting the family of God be what a family is, which is like natural and organic, and there's meshing, there's highs, there's lows. Sometimes we talk, sometimes we don't, but instead our vision of doing life together and our expectations of pastors and leaders and what family is supposed to look like is so honestly unattainable.
yes,
People get disappointed and exhausted and tired, and then you got all these people burnt out on every side. I'm talking about leadership all the way down to the people that come once a month.
yep.
It's interesting.
Dude, it's crazy because there's two things being played out at the same time. The expectation that leaders or that people on staff need to X, Y, and Z. It's, oh man, my family didn't do that. And so now I need you to do that so that you can fix what
Right.
my family didn't do. And people don't even do that consciously. Like we wonder why there's so many church splits and so many churches get started down the street from somebody else. And it's because, oh, you didn't heal my wounds from my
Mhm.
childhood. And whether those be gargantuan wounds or just, tiny little things where we have these expectations, you need to be better than my parents.
Right.
And when they're not, we freak out and we start a coup and we leave.
Yeah.
And so that's one dynamic. And then the other dynamic about the cliques, I think it's just middle school pain and trauma
Mhm.
of I got left out. And there's some people who they wear that as like the badge of courage of like, hey, I'm constantly left out. And so now when it happens at church where we're all supposed to be best friends, how on earth are we all supposed to be best friends? I mean, even Jesus, he had 12 dudes he hung out with all the time, but he
Right.
had three that he really hung out with all the time. But then he's got more that he's sending out, and there's tons of people constantly following him and listening to his sermons. And it's like, if Jesus knew how to kind of like shrink the circle, why do we not give like credence for that? Why don't we give space for that? What do you
Yeah.
think?
No, I think that is such a I don't know if I've ever actually really heard that talked about.
Hmm,
I'm sure someone has, but I mean,
probably.
I think that's so valid because I think so often we're trying to include everybody, which again, I get it. I think that's so it's a noble desire. Is it realistic? I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to say no because all things are possible to those who believe. I mean, come on. But I do also want to say that I think again we set up in church culture unrealistic expectations, and that's why there's so much pain.
Right.
That's why it's all of this pain. And when I say all, some of this pain can be really avoidable through communicating um, just really realistic ways. Like, and you kind of mentioned this earlier, but like number one, it's like stop. Like putting the pastor and the leadership in these God tier
Hmm.
places in your life. That's step one.
Yep.
Step two is realizing that church will not fulfill every need in your life, and that church is also messy.
Oh, come on.
It's messy. It is messy, and it's just, if this is a place where we do life together, we have to understand that life has its highs and lows, its ebbs, its flows. Yes, I did just rhyme there.
Come
Um,
on.
but
Songwriters got it right, baby. Come on.
songwriters got it right. But like it's this it's this thing where we have just, I think, honestly, romanticized church in a way that has led to a lot of hurt and pain.
Mm,
And then when there are things like tight knit friendships or tight knit communities within the church world, it can get a little weird. And I'm not saying that cliques don't exist, because I do want to go back and say that does happen.
right.
Um, but I think sometimes, and often more than not, things that are labeled cliquish are actually like-minded people that are just naturally joining together.
Right.
And it's how can we, as people that in oftentimes are in leadership roles, pastor that well and encourage it instead of discourage it
Hmm.
in a healthy way. And I honestly don't have an answer for that, because I think the church is figuring that out, because the Western church specifically, especially, and I've got a whole lot of thoughts on pastors. I'm sorry, you hear that bubble in my throat? I was like, pastors. Let
Well,
me clear my throat real quick. I have a whole bunch of thoughts on pastoral roles within church, and the way that it's treated. In fact, I saw a, a social media clip the other day, and it was some very southern pastor, and it reminded me a lot of how I grew up, pretty much being like, you know, if you don't think my life's your business, you better change your mind. Your life is my business. What you post on social media, the way you dress, blah blah. And I'm like, and I'm reading the comments, and a lot of people are like, oh, that's so funny. Like, could you imagine? I'm like, well, yeah. It's actually like, this is how people and a lot of people in leadership think they're supposed to lead. And I just want to say, I think you are absolutely delusional and wrong.
yeah.
This is what's driving people away. A pastor is a shepherd. Let's look at what shepherds do. They guide the sheep. They gently lead. They're not, I don't feel like they're hovering over and being like, I mean, maybe they are, and whatever. But I'm just saying, the way that pastors sometimes insert themselves into people's lives,
Yeah.
like, unless you're invited into that space, like, unless I look at you and say, Caleb, I want you on me like white on rice, like you
Hmm.
just, you know, if that is not something that is expressed, I think we are violating something.
Yep.
Um, and I mean, I'm saying things I've never said publicly before on this podcast, but I'm just saying, like,
Let it
we
flow, baby.
we I think we get into dangerous territory there.
Hmm.
And I have countless names in my head of people that have walked away from church because of things like that.
Yep.
And because there's never been a verbal, I'm sorry, I crossed the line.
Right.
And I practically tried to control your every move, and didn't let you just be a human being and go on a process with the Lord, and then be there waiting on the other side
Right.
saying, let's walk together. Let's get to healing. But
Right.
instead I was like, not me, but
Yeah.
these
I'm
leaders,
gonna heal you. Right.
these leaders were like, you know, every move you make, I'm gonna dissect, and and hover and punish.
Right.
And it's just it's weird.
They still got Sting and the Police in the back of their brain. I'll be watching you.
Yeah.
You. Um, Yeah, it's this like we think pastors, or I think pastors think, okay, I have to feed the sheep, but that means I physically have to open their jaws and make them chew the grass that I want them to chew, and then I have to like help it down into their esophagus and beyond.
Right.
But then we also, I think churchgoers have that mentality as well, is hey, you need to feed me and you need to be there to see that every word that goes into my mouth is perfect. And it's like if you look at Psalm 23, which we don't need to hang out there too long, but he prepares a table for me in the presence of my enemies. But he also like he prepares the table, but then he goes back down through the valley of the shadow of death and then brings them back through. So he's already been there once to prepare it, twice to come back, third time to take them in there. And then he's removed what he needed to that would be poisonous or dangerous that he can. But yeah, like if you've got 100 sheep or 500 sheep or 1,000 sheep, one dude standing in a field, sheep are everywhere eating.
Yeah.
He's just making sure, hey, have I brought you to a place that can feed all of y'all?
Yes. Yeah.
And
That's a
then,
way better description
right.
when with the shepherding. I think that's what I was trying to get at, but I was like, wait, they do hover over them. But I think that's way better. Uh, and that's so. I mean, that's such a great point, though. It's such a great point.
Because that's what pastoring is. And so like my job as a leader, your job as a leader, any pastor, any leader in a church, you're supposed to bring people to this place and let them eat. And some people are going to be eating over there, and some people are going to be eating over here. And yeah, that click and this click and all this jazz. Who cares? At the end of the day, we're all being fed. And if you're not eating, you're just in silent protest then.
Mhm.
And if you're not eating what the pastor's giving, you don't want to, yeah, you can go with some other shepherd. But has God moved you to that? Or are you running to that? Like there's so many men and women that we've sat under as church leaders, elders, and all the different kinds of things that I totally didn't listen to. And I didn't take the time to hear the wisdom that they had to share. And then one day God got a hold of me and I was like, oh my gosh, like I need to like accept the people who are in my circle. And so
Mhm.
I've started inviting, like you talked about, like I've invited older men and older women into our lives as a couple to be able to speak into and be able to like share wisdom. And it's like, dude, like I grow from those people. Like I love a good podcast and I love sermons and all that kind of stuff, but that's not everything I'm supposed to be eating.
Right. Right.
And so, yeah, there's so much misuse of relationship in church circles, and it's because we really don't know how to do relationship well.
Exactly. And again, I think it's all from really good hearts. Like, I think oftentimes I hear, especially people with church hurt, which by the way, I know people either love or hate that phrase. I'm like right in the middle because it's real.
Yep.
It's overused, but then it's also times often too swept underneath the rug. Like
Yeah.
it's one of those words that needs to be like deeply unpacked and just cared for well because
Mhm.
it can go either way. But all that to say is I hear a lot of people say like, these pastors, they're just evil men and and I want to be like 99% of the pastors I've met, 99, there are 1% that are like actually they are pretty evil. But like 99% of the pastors, like they are good people.
Yeah.
A lot of times when there are discrepancies or pain or anything, a lot of times they just don't know how to, like you said, do relationships well, to nurture people well, to
Yeah.
be empathetic, to sit and listen, to have boundaries, like we are discussing here. Because, like, I think one of the things that we have both said here is what a difference it makes when you invite wisdom into your life.
Right.
But it's a verbal, clear, communicative way of saying, I want you to speak into my life, and here are the parameters in which I'd like you to do that.
Right.
Like, and I think that's really important. I know consent is like, the Gen Z word now. Like, I'm really big into consent, which, by the way, that's great. Consent is wonderful.
Yeah.
But
That's actually how it should be.
yeah, it should be. But like, consent should be spoken more about in church, I think.
Yes.
Like, have I given this person the keys to my life and the depths of who I am and the secrets of my heart. And
Right.
the pastors, are you asking, has this person invited me to speak to them on a deeper level outside of the Sunday morning message? And so like I think sometimes when we are laying into people and just being like blah 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 and like discerning their spirit, which by the way, most of the time that's your opinion that you heard from someone else called gossip, and
Say it.
your discernment is judgment. I'm just saying, gosh, how many times I've seen that ruin people's lives. But
Oh, dude.
all that to say is when there's that invitation there on both sides, such beauty can come out of that
Yeah.
because there is this openness in your heart, in your spirit, in your soul. Um, and you can receive what you're supposed to receive from the Lord through the power of the Holy Spirit, obviously through the Word, and these pastors and leaders have grounded themselves in and studied and can guide and direct these people into. So anyway,
Yeah. Dude, because the thing is that we've got, well, like you've said, well-intentioned people wanting to help.
yes,
But if someone hasn't asked for it, we're as abusive as whatever caused that pain in the first place. And there's
correct.
so much spiritual abuse in the church because we don't wait for permission.
Yep.
And so, like, whether that be giving a prophetic word, okay, hey, is that, like, did you even ask, is this okay for me to do that?
Right.
And like, there's some people who just walk up, well, God wants me to say this. And I'm like, okay, like, you just power played me by using God's name. So now I can't tell you that,
Yeah,
you might be operating in your flesh.
my favorite is this. This has happened to me multiple times, and surprise, surprise, people have opinions about me. But
Oh,
um, this has happened. I can't even count them as how many times this has happened. Um, Someone will come to me and be like, you know, I used to really have a lot of thoughts about you. I thought you were blah 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 blah, 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 blah. And they'll come. So first they'll say that, then they pray this prayer. Like it is always kind of the same prayer over me. It's like this passive aggressive, like it's like a backhanded compliment. Like, Lord,
yeah.
thank you so much for the anointing on his life, even though I'm like over here, like, how God can you use someone like this? God, like, and I'm just standing there like.
Dude, that happened. That has happened to us. It's happened to me at every church we've been at. Some guy will
Yeah,
come up to me about 6 to 12 months in and go, I hated you when you first showed up. And I'm like,
right, right. Thank
hi,
you.
hi, I'm Caleb. What's your
Yeah,
name?
right.
Like,
Thank you so much.
yeah, you're
I have
fine.
never, I didn't even know you existed.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm so glad I was here to hurt you.
Right.
Um, and dude, like, yeah, so we've got people just overshare stuff. They're nervous, they want to hang out, especially like for you, you are you travel, you're with Waking the Dawn, you've been with some huge ministries in the past, and you know a ton of people, and everybody sees you on a stage, and everybody wants to know you, and everybody does know you, but yeah, you don't know everybody.
Right, right.
And so yeah, the expectation that, oh, David needs to know my name. Why? He was in the
Right,
same room with you, but he was looking at 100 of you or 1,000 of you or 2,000 of you, and you're one of those 100,000, 2,000. So like, yeah, there's so much inconsistency and there's so much brokenness that we just keep throwing it at each other.
right.
And then we sit there and demand that people help us, but we haven't asked for it. So this happened to me a couple of years ago. It actually happens quite often. People are like, well, Caleb didn't help me. And it eventually comes around like people will tell me, well, man, you didn't help him. He's super pissed. And I'm like, you never asked for help.
Hmm.
Well, like, why didn't you just help him? Because you didn't ask. And I've given advice when people didn't ask and they got pissed at me for it and they got hurt by it. And I probably overstepped. But if someone doesn't ask, and so, there's different situations where people will be like, well, man, like, I'll see if they can ask and I'll wait. Like, I
Hmm.
mean, I'm like angry on the inside because I'm like, I know you want my help,
Right,
but
right.
you won't ask me for it.
Hmm.
And it's like, and it's so frustrating because it's like we just want to hear people's advice without humbling ourselves to the process of relationship. And relationship takes me saying, hey, David, like, what do you think about this? And like, can you
Right,
help me with this? And can you work this out with me? And you might give advice that I don't like.
right.
But why did I ask for it in the first place? And like, okay, I asked for it, you gave it to me. Why did I not like it?
Yep,
Ooh,
yep.
because it probably hit my flesh,
Hmm.
and if I can actually humble my flesh to my spirit, I actually might be able to receive what you have for me.
Right.
But I think a lot of church teaching is flesh modification versus like quieting that wolf, so to speak, and not feeding it so that the spirit can live.
Right. Yeah, it's also interesting because I think you learn obviously as you go. Everyone has different approaches, but I do think one of the things that is so needed, I think on all levels, all streams, all denominations, is communication.
Yep.
It's huge. and
Huge.
and and boundaries. I think, like, let's even look at, you're seeing ministries pop up all the time, on reports, and scandal here, scandal there, scandal everywhere. I'm rhyming again. Um, um, And I think when you read a lot of it and study a lot of it, is that it really does boil down to communication, boundaries, um, and just people not getting in the spot of assumption or honestly like letting somebody who they barely know speak into their life because they're once again placed in this god tier place. And so two things happen. This person placed in this god tier place is usually so siloed because nobody is brave enough to approach them, or they have. And I'll tell you this, I have been close to some of these situations, not necessarily in them, but very aware of things that are going on. A lot of times, what happens is these guys and these men or women, who whichever one they are, that are usually up at the top, they often are lonely and have so much they want to process, but they have no one to process with because there's no one to trust and there's
Right.
no one that is willing to speak with them.
Right.
Uh, and so then what ends up happening is all this stuff begins to happen. And then it gets in such a whirlwind that they're in self deception, they're in secrecy, they're in all this. So let's go down here. Down here, you've got this person that is willing to, if the person said, I want you to hop on one foot, eat a pancake, I'm just coming up with something,
And a
and,
pickle.
yeah, eat a pancake and a pickle, and blink your eyes 50 times a second. They would try because they're like, oh my gosh, this person's so holy and amazing, and this other person is so lonely, siloed, and honestly gets in this place of delusion that they're like, oh, this person will do anything, and that this is they often see that as like affection and and like what's that loyalty, and it
Right.
just gets twisted and weird.
Right.
And and I think, like I said, on every denomination, it's not just charismatic, all over the place. If we can get in this place of communication and setting boundaries and not allowing leaders to get in this place where they're so siloed that they get into delusion and secrecy, and and every time it's problematic.
Right. But that's
And then
where,
also,
go ahead.
yeah, I was going to say, and also not allowing people that are hungry for the Lord, but then end up getting their lines crossed and begin to say, "That's my Lord."
Right.
It's just anyway. I
And
could go
that's
on.
and that's because that the person who's not in the ministry is also so lonely and twisted and they've got their
Yeah.
own stuff that they're just looking for any form of connection.
Yes.
And that's what the guy or the woman in ministry is doing. We're just
Right.
looking for connection. We all want to be connected, but no one knows who to trust because we've all been betrayed, we've all been hurt, we've all been, spoken poorly of, and we're so all of us have been wounded by that. And
Yes.
so then it comes to this place of okay, and this is the thing that I think social media has made worse is I need my platform.
Yeah.
So I'll do anything I can to get there. I don't care who I'm going to stab in the back. I don't care who I'm going to talk bad about. I don't care about this. I don't care about that. I just need to get where I need to get. But then now, because that's a lonely road to walk, when they get there, it's lonely.
Hmm.
Meanwhile, like to actually meet someone who doesn't have an agenda, that's that's few and far between.
It's incredibly rare. It's
Be-
incredibly rare.
because I'll try to talk to pastors and I can tell they're like, so what's in this for you? And I'm like, I just wanted to eat lunch and
Right.
see how you're doing. And they're like, but nobody does that. And I'm like, all right, like, could I ask you some things about our ministry? Yes. Do we fundraise? Yes. Do I have books? Do we have songs and retreats and all this different stuff? Absolutely. But which is more important, me selling myself or us actually doing life together?
Right.
And it's like, but we've lost that. We've lost that in the church. We've lost that in the social media world, especially for Christian influencers. It's all about, hey, who's the next guy I can talk to that will get me to the next place instead of, hey, let's do this through relationship.
Yes.
And like there's people I could ask to come on this thing that I know, but I don't really know.
Right.
And it's not worth it. But you and I talk regularly and we
Hmm.
see each other regularly. And the other guys that have been on here, they're people I have a relationship with.
Right.
And it'll be cool to have some people on here that are beyond that. But at the end of the day, it's like, dude, I want to talk to my friends about the things that are going on in their
Yeah.
world.
No,
And that's what matters.
absolutely. Absolutely. And you can get me going on the networking stuff. I mean, that like, and to my detriment, I am I'm awful at the ministry networking stuff. I'm awful at like the self promotion. I'm awful at,
Yeah, me
and I'm
too.
saying to my detriment because I also want to say like some of that you need that sometimes. You need like I won't name the name, but there's a one guy. I really actually admire the way he does networking because he's shown me that there can be relationship in networking.
That's good.
Um, because I used to be kind of like what's the word down with the system kind of guy,
Hmm.
like no networking, like no self promotion. But I'm like, you know what, sometimes you do need to put yourself out there and you're staying out there, especially if you really believe in it and you could feel like in ministry. I think the question you always need to ask yourself when you get in that promotion place or that networking place is, can this actually affect and change people's lives? And is it worth putting that out there
Right.
in an aggressive way? And so anyway, I've seen this guy do it, and there are times where I'm like, I don't know how in God's name he does it. I would want to eat myself alive
Right.
because that stuff just really it irks me, and
Yeah.
like I said, to my detriment. But I've seen him. He probably does it. I'm not saying perfectly, but in the best, most organic way. And I know he believes truly what he's pushing for is not only burning in his heart and will help people, but is also burning on the Lord's heart. And so I'm always very like, okay, there is a way to do this well. But I would say the majority of what I see is cringe, and it makes me just go, ugh.
Right.
Um, and so like one thing I'm having to learn as I get more into different ministry spaces is I'm having to learn to, number one, not have the immediate reaction every time someone wants to connect with me of what do you want from me?
Right.
Because that's where I go naturally. Number two, on the totally opposite side of the spectrum, is I also can't go into those moments or those connection times thinking, oh, well, this person wants to be my friend. I almost have to go right down the middle and say, let's give it a chance and see what happens. I'm
Right.
not going to go in with what do you want from me, but I'm also not going to go in being like, wow, we're gonna run together, which I can't stand that phrase, but we're gonna run together. We're we're gonna plow in ministry. Like
Yeah.
those two things are not leading my motivation. My
Right.
what I'm doing now when I am meeting someone is saying, well, let's see where this goes, but I'm open to uh, meeting this person, hearing their heart, and going from there. You
Right.
know,
Right. And that's just the natural way of things. Like
right,
every whether you're looking for a church, whether you're looking to find a friend or whatever it is, like you can always kind of tell, like, hey, this just isn't working. It's not
yeah,
vibing. We're not really clicking. Um, and people get mad that they're not a part of, like, going back to the click thing. They're mad that they're not a part of that click, but it's like, but you don't do the same things. You don't talk about the same things. You don't watch the same movies, read the same books, but you want so desperately to be seen as the cool kid.
right,
And maybe that group might not even be cool, but they love each other and they're
right,
connected and they're outgoing. So that must mean that they're super cool because they're doing all the things I wish I could do. And it's like,
right,
dude, like this is it's just all the insecurity and all the pain and all the different stuff that just swirls inside of us that it's like, hey, have you actually ever dealt with that? Have you
right.
dealt with the fact that like, is Jesus enough?
Mm,
Have you walked through that season by yourself with the Lord where it's just you and him? And most people won't give themselves to that.
right, right,
And most people get forced into it, but they still don't give themselves to it. And that's the generation that dies off in Exodus that they couldn't go into the promised land because they were just so set in their ways they couldn't
right,
change.
right.
And so, yeah, it's the networking thing. I'm the same way. I can't stand self-promotion. I can let Bethany go talk about something, but for me to talk about it, I'm like, and
Yeah.
maybe that's just our own insecurities. I definitely think it is a part of mine, but it's also like, hey, what am I here to do? Am I
Hmm.
here to promote myself or am I here to promote Jesus? Am I here to promote healing? And I don't want to like over spiritualize that, but the truth is like, hey, if I'm here to promote the Lord, is that enough?
Right.
And can we settle for that? And even having to say that word settle for that, that feels wrong because it's like, hey, the Lord's definitely enough.
Right. Right.
And like, will he take care of it? Yes. Does it take some self-promotion? Probably to get your stuff out there. But at the same time, you can do all the things and spend thousands and thousands of dollars and nothing happen.
Oh, and I've seen it.
Hmm.
Seen it.
And th- and then God just breathes on somebody's project and it goes nuclear. And you're
Right.
like, huh.
Isn't that crazy?
Hmm.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that. And again, I think there is just like it's a balance, it's a dance. It's like, you know, because I don't want to be that person that's like, don't, promote yourself, like blah 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 blah. Because like
Right.
I've seen that. It's kind of the same people that are on the big kick right now about like um, what is pure worship, what is not. Like um I just I'm like this is number one, this is a stupid conversation. Number two, you're telling me that the Baptist over here, who probably doesn't know anything about like the book of the Song of Songs, or or any of the verses that we would know, like in the charismatic world. You're telling me their expression of worship is unpure. They're coming and singing these songs that they probably barely understand, but they have this desperation in their heart, that they're like, man, I just need God, and they view it on the Sunday morning as this moment to meet with God, and maybe that's the only time they think about God. But what if their worship is just as pure as those of us who are doing, daily 2 hour worship sets, and singing all of the phrases that we see our favorite worship leaders sing on YouTube, over and over, and call it spontaneous. It's like it's they're equally pure.
Yeah.
A silly conversation. Like,
Yeah.
what are we doing? Anyway, I just don't want to get into that space of being, again, so dogmatic and so absolute,
Sith like.
Sith like, that we get into this place of us versus them. No, it's we're all going after the Lord together. If
Right.
if you believe in the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, we are saved by Jesus Christ through his blood, through his sacrifice. Obviously the non-negotiables. Man, your worship is pure because you're giving your heart to the
Right.
Lord in per your understanding. And some of us have an understanding more than others.
Right.
But that doesn't mean their worship isn't pure. That doesn't mean, and let's go broader. Their approach to the Lord isn't pure. Like, oh
Yeah.
my goodness, it's so toxic.
What do you think causes that? Because like we were at that conference with you the other week and we got to speak at one of the breakouts and a beautiful like uh this woman had this beautiful question of like, hey, like why can't we ever just sit in the presence for those 2 hour sessions and just stay there all the time? And I was like, that would become the new norm and we would get sick of that at some point. And it would either have to go shorter or longer to overcome that. And she
Right.
was like, what do you mean? And I was like, the whole point is not, is it 15 minutes? Is it 15 hours? That doesn't matter. Where's your heart in it? And
Exactly.
so Jesus only did what he saw the Father doing, and he only said what he heard the Father saying. And so I was like, if Jesus is done worshiping, but we feel like we haven't stirred it up enough and we haven't sat in the presence long enough, we're doing it for us, not for him.
Exactly.
And so, like, why do you think we have this, like, the comparison thing, the hand versus the foot, Baptist versus charismatic, Presbyterian versus Methodist? Like, why do we have that?
Well, I think oftentimes because, and again, I think it comes from a good place, right? So let's look at like and this is a part of the church I'm kind of becoming more familiar with, is like the liturgical.
Hmm.
So oftentimes they're like, we've forgotten about like traditions and discipline that in our spirit, and reading and studying, and our brains, and they're like these charismatics. They'll look at a cup of coffee and think the Lord's speaking to them, right? And they're like,
Right.
blah blah. And the charismatics over here and being like, there's not enough Holy Spirit, and blah, blah, blah. And I think they all have like good intention, because they're like, we're missing something here, we're missing something there, or you know you know, the like the new thing right now I'm seeing, we'll go back to the worship space. I have nothing against this, but it's like, you know, these worship leaders not facing the crowd, and it's like this new thing where everyone's like, I am so spiritual because I'm doing this now, leading people. Well, let me also remind you, there are people that need to be faced and
Right.
led and directed. That doesn't work in every atmosphere, and that's not that's not us trying to fix them. We should celebrate them,
Yeah.
and that's awesome. That's all. I love you, Seeker Sensitive Church, that's singing these three same old songs, but maybe there's this, you know, let's say there's this guy that walks in and they hear a song and it resonates and he accepts Jesus. Are we going to call that unpure
Right.
or unrighteous? Like that's crazy. That's
Mm.
insanity.
Yeah.
Insanity. Let's remember what the Bible says, that we are the body with different, you know, like the body, the hands over here, the foot's over here. We're doing different things that are different functions. Let's celebrate that. We
Right.
couldn't function without the other. We wouldn't be a whole body without the different parts moving and functioning the way they're supposed to be moving. So I think oftentimes it's that this group thinks that they have wisdom and insight to fix this group, and they have wisdom and insight to fix this group. But what if instead we said, again, let's go back to the basic things, the foundations we agree on, the way we express it is absolutely different. That's okay. I love you. We celebrate you. Hey, Baptist, you're getting more people saved in a Sunday than we did in 5 years.
Right.
Charismatic churches that are, you know, we act like we are saving the world, but honestly, we're just ministering to the Lord and ourselves,
Right.
and we're forgetting about the people. But at the same time, you can look at the Baptist church and say, well, you're just so focused on the people, you're not ministering to the Lord. What if we're all doing what we're supposed to be doing and we could stop judging each other?
Right.
It's crazy to me.
Because we think that, like, oh, if you got saved in my church, you're going to stay here for the rest of your life. And it's like,
Right,
no, like, I have to tell pastors all the time, like, dude, if you get someone for like 3 to 5 years, man, like, you hit the lottery. Because, like,
exactly.
and there are churches that have people that stayed there from birth to death. Like, I
Right,
grew up in that church. And, like, if you left, it was like, well, I guess they don't love Jesus anymore. It's like, dear God, no, that's not the point. Like, if you find a good community, and churches used to be that. I think I've talked about that with someone else on here. That like Little House on the Prairie, there's not another town for 100 miles, and you have a horse.
right,
Like you're not going to a church down in the next town. You're going to whatever church is available, and it's your
exactly.
community and it's your people, and like you guys are just going to pull together. Now we have cars that go 60 miles an hour. That yeah, you can hit. You can go 100 miles away if you want to. It's going to take you a few, like an hour or so or whatever to get there. But you can go to that church if you want to. You can also go
Right,
online. You can go here. You can go there. And now like the internet has made it that we can all see what everybody's doing, and now we live in comparison.
right.
And it's like, dude, like, but if Christ is the head and Christ causes the growth, the hand is doing what it's supposed to do, the foot's doing what it's supposed to do, the hip is doing whatever the hip is supposed to do. And it's like, dude, can we just acknowledge that, bless it, and say, hey, I don't get that, but I'm gonna bless it.
Exactly. Exactly.
And we don't do that well, which is a shame because there is such beauty in the liturgical. Like
Oh yeah.
a lot of my family go to a church that's very liturgical. I myself would find beauty in it. I don't know if I could continue to find beauty in it long term because I
Right.
do love more charismatic expression. But I've lived in a slightly liturgical Methodist church growing up. I went to a
Hmm.
Baptist college, and then I've been like sprinkled in and out of like semi-charismatic, full charismatic things since then. And it's like, dude, if we're going after the Lord and we are trying to bless people, amen.
Yep.
And I can deal with it. Now, in a perfect world, could I do what I wanted to do? Yeah. But it's like at the end of the day, like are we drawing community together? Are we drawing people towards the Lord and being able to grow? And if that church down the street has a different name on the front than what I like, but they're still doing well, can I still reach out to them and bless them?
Exactly. Exactly. My former boss, uh, and he's very well known. I just don't say his name these days because just don't. But most you probably all know who it is, but I'm just not gonna say anyway. I always admired him and we disagreed on a lot of stuff, a lot
Hmm.
of stuff. And anyway, I always admired him because he was one of the very rare leaders that I met that celebrated all of the expressions of the church.
Wow.
One of the things I loved about him was he was not afraid, number one, to state what he believed in his preference and the way that the ministry was going to go, but he was also not afraid of other opinions coming in and being like, we don't like what you do, or we disagree with that. And he'd be like, that's okay. Well, we can still coexist. Let's celebrate each other.
Right.
And I just, I find that to be so rare in modern day church because it's like, no, this is, blah, blah, blah. Or it's kind of this new thing I'm also seeing. It's that people aren't necessarily saying it, but they are modeling it in the sense of what we do is right and great, and everyone do what we're doing. And they give this message because it's not being pastored well
Yep.
on these huge, big international ministries. It's not being pastored well and communicated well in saying, yes, this is a beautiful expression of the body of Christ and a beautiful expression of worship. However, they're not pastoring it through and saying, but there are also other expressions that are also beautiful.
Right.
But they're modeling this and giving it to a bunch of Gen Z, Gen Alpha who are now I'm starting to see the same religious spirit, and people are gonna be like, no, what you're calling religious spirit is you're saying messy grace or whatever that stupid phrase that got popular is. That I'm not saying that. I'm saying that there's this new kind of religious spirit that popped up in the 80s and 90s. It's starting to resurface again in a different way.
Mm.
And I'm seeing it in the church again. It's this judgmental, it has to look this way. These people are wrong. These people, blah, blah, blah. And everybody's got these opinions. And now with social media, like you were saying, it's becoming even more prevalent. And we are not giving grace for humanity to, which, by the way, we often forget about this scripture, constantly work out our salvation. That is a scripture, by the way, that no one likes to talk about because no one wants to have to talk that through.
Right.
Working out your salvation, working out means building a muscle, or we can go even further, figuring it out, going the highs, the lows, the paths, the walking away, the coming back to, the being deep in the Lord's heart, to being far away from the Lord. That stuff is going to happen. But instead, now we're just communicating you should be seated in the heavenly places, which we are, no matter what our behavior is. 24/7 ministry to
Hmm.
the Lord in the worship room and blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's awesome for the 10% of you who could do that all
Right.
the time, while the 90% of the rest of the world is trying to navigate poverty, broken families, sexual sin, wanting to play video. Let's go less big, wanting to play video games
Yeah.
instead of going to the prayer room. Like, it's like we neglect these types of conversations because we're calling these people to live up here, burn for God. But then we're like, but also, don't talk about just normal life.
Yeah.
God's
Humanity
not in
again.
that.
Right.
Only in this. No, God's in the minuscule, mundane. That's where you really find him.
Dude. And like, okay, so you get angry at a video game, chuck your controller across the room.
Yeah.
Now we actually get to talk about what's actually going on inside of you. Whereas you just come in and fall asleep at a church service, you're already defensive. And it's this like it's this idea that, yeah, like you said it's right versus wrong, which is always there's always the religious spirit. Hey, which is right, which is wrong? And I'm like, dude, is God in it? Let's do it. And it's like,
Right.
let's go for it. But I'm definitely on this kick right now of is the religious is like is the, I'm not saying this in a negative, like is the religious thing the best thing? So like I've really gotten into fly fishing lately and I talk about it all the time and people get tired of it. But like I've experienced God more on a creek, me and him sitting there fishing, talking, than I have in a lot of church services lately.
Yes.
And I say
Yeah.
that carefully because I'm in some really cool churches right now, but it's like and I've seen God do things, but it's so the rote, let's do what somebody else did and hopefully we'll get their fame so we can become the next famous thing on the East Coast. And it's like, that's not the point. I'm not supposed to take Saul's armor and wear it to go fight Goliath. I'm supposed to be me.
Right.
And so like I'm sitting here being like, man, like I have better conversations with people in the activity of video games, going out to eat, you know, fishing, shooting, whatever it is. And we get to do those things. And then good conversations come up.
Yes.
And like, and to say that that's not spiritual, but being in the prayer room 24/7 is, sorry, I'm not going to say the name or anything, but clearly being in the prayer room 24/7 doesn't stop people from sinning either.
Exactly.
It's like, and actually, there's a lot of sin that probably happens because of that.
It-
And it's like, that's not the pinnacle. The
it's
pinnacle
not real
is,
life.
dude, it's not real whatsoever. And for
Not real life.
some of the Levites who have been chosen as Levitical priests unto this season, I'm like, cool. The Levites still had to eat some barbecue.
Exactly. And
So yeah, it drives me nuts, man.
yeah, it's that I think if I can articulate more of what I was saying earlier was or maybe a little bit more clear is I think this new kind of religious thing I'm seeing pop up is like an unrealistic religious spirit
Mm.
that again is well intended but is not being pastored well because you're getting a lot of these young leaders with microphones and platforms calling generations to do this and that or the other. And so it's kind of like that 90s thing that, the purity culture in the 90s that got so big and it got to the point where it was like ridiculous. Like your hair couldn't be a certain length. I mean, I grew up in that world.
Yeah,
Your hair couldn't be a certain length. You couldn't wear certain colors. You couldn't, I mean, it got so ridiculous that so many people walked away from the Lord because,
right.
and like, what a petty thing to walk away from God from. And but like that to me is on the church because of the way that was handled in so many different ways. But anyway, all that to say is what I'm seeing now is like these people and communicating these big, grandiose ideas that if I can be honest with you, I tell people this all the time. I've had hundreds of ministry school students I've told this to that I personally, worked with. And I said, how many of you guys want to be in ministry? Obviously all of them raised their hand. And I said, 5% of you will be, and count yourself blessed.
Hmm.
I was like, 95% of you will be in normal 9 to 5 jobs. Do not despise it. This is real life. I was like, this is where you will find God. You will find God while you're crunching numbers as an accountant. You will find
Yes.
God as you're an executive. You will find God as you are a real estate agent. Like this is the beautiful life that is set up before us. Ministry is beautiful too, but I think we're setting up a generation again where we're like ministry. This is the pinnacle. This is the thing. This is what you and I want to be like, no, my people, we need humans to be human and to
Hmm.
find God in ways. If you read the Bible, none of those folks were in ministry until the New Testament, Book of Acts. And by the way, most of those people were killed, murdered. It's not a fun, easy life. Sawed in half, crucified upside down,
Right.
like stoned. Like, come on, like I feel like we don't talk about these kinds of things because we're just like, yeah, ministry and living this holy life. And yes, we are called to holiness, but does holiness look the way we have painted it? I don't think so, because then we're not allowing humans to have any human emotion. And if they do, and if they have any human feelings or whatever, the shame and guilt and pain that we put on these kids and honestly adults is crazy. Is Jesus putting that on you? No, it's these pastors and leaders and worship leaders who have a bunch of opinions and probably a ton of hidden sin that they're not willing to talk about except when they have their podcast microphone and make everybody feel bad and call them to the carpet. But the minute their stuff is called out, they go silent, delete their Instagram account, their Facebook, and you don't hear from them again.
Never.
No one's being real,
Yeah.
and we're setting up these things and we're not allowing people that be humans that have humanity and a life with God. Anyway,
Right.
I can get real heated on this kind of stuff. I've
I'm
seen it
for it,
ruin
baby.
so many people's lives.
Dude, it's ruining everybody because the people who are outside the church feel the shame, and it causes them to not want to go to church because of the perceived perfection inside of the walls. And then the
Yes.
people who are saved who go to church inside of the walls can't tell the truth because of the shame of I can't be perfect.
Right.
And so like literally my like everything that's boiled down for me, I don't think I've talked about this on this podcast yet, but have you heard about kintsugi, the Japanese art form?
No, I don't think so.
It is wrecking my life. I've actually known about it for the last few years and I'm like slowly working on some stuff to try to get it out there. But kintsugi is the art of broken pieces. And so in
Mm,
Japan, if a like a ceramic bowl were to break in America, we're going to throw it away and go get a new one at Target, or we're going to like super glue it and try to make it look like it never got broken.
right.
In Japan, they actually take gold dust, actual gold dust, and or silver dust or different kinds of jewels. They add it to the adhesive and they purposely accentuate the break as they fix it to accentuate the history of the object.
Wow.
And so
Wow.
by putting it together with golden glue, you see the crack all the way through the object. But now when the person says, "Hey, what happened to that thing?" "Oh man, that was the night that dot 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 happened." And so
Mm,
whether, "Hey, my wife went into labor and she dropped the bowl and that was the night my son was born," or, "Hey, that was the night I got royally pissed and chucked it at the wall
right.
and my marriage was on the rocks." But God came through and we kept that as a reminder that we are better with God than without him.
That's so cool.
And so the art of kintsugi is the object not only has a greater history because of the gold and glue, it actually its value has increased because of the time taken to mend it.
Wow.
And so if you look at it from a biblical standpoint, God's touch on my life when it's been broken, I walk away more valuable because his golden touch in my life reveals his need and desire to want to heal me and walk with me, but also continue to use me.
That's so cool.
And so like this one little thing, it hit me when I saw this article one day, I read it and I was like, oh my God, it's like it's wrecked everything. So like everything that I do with people, like if I find out there's brokenness, which all of us have it,
Right.
it's like, hey, if you give that to God, there is not shame, there's gold that he wants to add to it. That even though you will always remember that break, you're actually going to remember him healing you and still using you on the other side. And that
Yeah.
matters more. So if we
Wow.
could actually get that concept into America, that we don't throw something away because it's broken, but we actually take the time to heal it and to add value to it, we could actually let church be a place where people could have cracks and it's okay.
I mean, and that would actually be huge because it would make people feel safe, you
Right.
know, which I think is something that that I think the church has really struggled with.
Hmm.
And I think that there is obviously there are things that you do have to call out.
Right.
You've gotta fix. Some things need to be like I'm not one of those people that is like, oh, this person did this, which is like the most atrocious thing. Like, oh, let's restore them. No, sometimes it's like you should probably never speak into someone's life publicly and or on an official level ever again.
Ever again.
But then there's other things where it's like, let's not like I cannot stand the thought or the fact that if any person in ministry, outside of ministry, in church, whatever, is caught in this or that, or there's a stumble here or the blah blah. It's like, well, you got to be sat down and but like, oh my lord, it's like, oh my goodness, like if we really, 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 and I say really, I'm not
Really.
talking about shallow, I'm talking about really had like if we all took like a potion where we all had to say the most honest, we all could only respond in the most honest way. Not a single person would be allowed in the church walls by the
Ever.
not a single person,
Right.
not a single person would be allowed in. And so if we kind of set this space up to where it's like church is a place, like you said, where the cracks can be mended back together. And then I love that thing of the gold. And let's remember when you walk through this and you didn't walk alone, you walked with such and such, and
Hmm.
that church supported you, didn't judge you, didn't throw you out, but actually said, we are believing that the Lord is going to restore this person's life. And it might take some time and it might be ugly,
Right.
but our hearts are with you. And there might be some things that we have to set boundaries here and put you here, whatever. That's all part of the process. But it's like, I feel like we get so in focus on, well, this person's in sin. Let's remove them, ban them, and kick them out. And now let's gossip about them. Okay, pray for them in a prayer meeting. No, gossip about them. And then they feel that, and then it pushes them. I mean, we can go on and on, but
We could, man, but that's the terrifying thing of Christianity. I think why so many people walk away from it is that you are here as a means to my end,
yes,
and when you no longer are beneficial, we will discard you and find the next one. And
right,
I'm like, and you were right. If there are certain things that you probably shouldn't be able to get back on a stage again,
absolutely.
and yet, who is going to walk with that person
Yeah, that's a good
to
one.
to the Lord to pick up those pieces and say, "Hey, God, we need you to put this back together," not for the purpose of necessarily maybe like vocational ministry, but so that their life can get put back together.
Yes,
And but we don't do that for the pastor in sin. We don't even do it for the pastor in secret sin because he can't come out because he would lose his church if he did. But what
okay,
about the guy who's attending the church who we all know is the drug addict?
right.
No one wants to spend time with him. The guy struggling financially, the guy who can't stop drinking, like all these different things. And it's like, do we actually take the time to do what the scripture says, which is to love people and minister and walk with people? Or do we just care about keeping our perfectly mended, you know, bowls and there's nothing cracked here? And I'm like, oh God. So
And then that is viewed as holiness, which I'm like, that's not holiness, by the way.
it's not holiness, man. And
This is a desire to become more like Jesus,
right.
and oftentimes that looks ugly. I mean,
Yeah.
again, read the stinking scriptures. The disciples who we revere as some of the holiest people to ever live. You know, obviously Jesus is the holiest, but you know, they were scoundrels,
Yeah.
scoundrels, like kind of low-key pirates of their time. And Jesus is like, you know what? I want you 12.
Yeah.
I want you 12, and we're gonna work this out. Oh,
Hmm.
you like to murder people? Okay, that's fine. I'm gonna make you one of the greatest apostles of all time. You know, like let's talk about that. But no, oh no, no, no. Like I found out that this pastor likes bourbon. Disqualified. No,
Right.
like I'm like, come on, guys. Like I get and listen. Anyway, you can get me going, and I know I gotta go, but
Yeah.
we gotta have a part two, I think. But
We definitely need a part two.
yeah, we could go on. I have just a lot of thoughts.
We got so many thoughts. And yeah, so to sum up, the church is broken. We're pretending we're not.
Oh, I'm
And
broken. I'm
yeah,
broken. Yeah.
dude, yeah, we can get into the nitty gritty next time.
Yeah.
We got stuff going on right now, and it's like we are all going through things, and there's just no permission for it. And the people who have to live perfect, they're shattering themselves under the weight of that perfection, and that's not okay. So
And let me just end with let me say this on one thing. If you are watching this and you find yourself in that space, I know there's a lot of people that are like, I don't feel safe. You know, what if I need to, you know, communicate this or you know talk to someone about this, and then I talk to that person, and then I'll get kicked out of. Find yourself friends that you can be 100% you with without any reservation.
that's good.
It's so huge. My wife and I have a couple friend that we could talk about problems in our marriage. We could talk about personal issues. We could talk about we call them roses and thorns. Like here are my roses, here are my thorns. You know,
I love that.
and we can just be ourselves, and it's such a beautiful thing because that's real church and community. And let me tell you, it's unfiltered.
Yep.
Like we're not going in there and be like, well, brother, you know, sometimes I just can't stand my wife. She drives me, she kind of drives me bonkers sometimes. No, like
But
I'm
I
going,
love her.
yeah, I'm going in there and be like, she is not listening to me. I'm annoyed with her, and blah, 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 blah. Or you know that kind of like it's real. It's
Yeah.
real. It's not church. And so anyway, I just want to say, find those friends, single or married, whatever, that you could like really bring your stuff to and you can process with, look at the word together, pray together, you know, even just have disagreement, whatever. But like that's real relationship that will like get you in such a good space that oftentimes where if you don't feel safe, you can have that community that is honestly the real community
Yeah,
and that you can walk through life with. So I just want to encourage you if you can find those friends, develop those friendships, it's a game changer. It's a lifesaver. So
absolutely. Well, David Vallier, you're an amazing, amazing man. And thank you for sharing this stuff because this is the stuff the church needs to be talking about. And it's probably what God wants to do to help fix some things. And not that he needs to fix anything, but he wants to mend some things in the church. And I think he's going to continue to use your voice to do that. So thank you, man.
we definitely need a part two though. I'm
We're
just
doing it.
we've got to
We got to
so
continue this.
much. Yeah.
I know. And the neon in the background, I mean, it's just like we need more of it. I need more
No.
bells and more neon.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Caleb.
Dude,
We'll
thank
talk
you.
soon.
Yes, sir. Love you, man.